It's about the restoration of our republic. We want to educate, encourage, enable the power. We stand for integrity, honesty, self-reliance, self-defense, and most importantly, no compromise on our foundational principles. This is America's Voice Now.
Find America's Voice Now on Facebook and at americasvoicenow.org. Here's Michael Evans.
Good morning, America. You're listening to America's Voice Now. My name is Michael Evans. I'll be your host this morning. It's nice to be with you folks on a day after Christmas. Kind of fell in the middle of the week there, a little unusual, but here we are nonetheless. Before we go into our weekend, and we'll have today and tomorrow to review some issues, we're going to cover a couple of different topics this morning, including how Obamacare can't get his ID approved to sign up for the Obamacare program. It's interesting that in an effort to try to entice others to sign up for this, the president is signing up for an Obamacare plan he'll never utilize because, of course, his health care and the health care of his family are handled by the federal government already under a program which you would not have any hope of gaining access to. They're treated by the best doctors at the best medical facilities in the world, and, of course, you get whatever the dregs are that are left behind for Medicare and Medicaid and so forth and so on. However, the real problem is that he can't get his ID approved. And the concern with that, of course, is that the real reason he can't get himself approved is because he doesn't have any level of credibility in terms of his personal identification. Why, you ask? Well, we know a number of things. First of all, his birth certificate is a fraud. I've seen the information and the way it was built and designed personally. I've told you that before. Working with Photoshop on a day in and day out basis, it's as plain as the nose on your face for anyone who works with that application to see exactly how it works and how they created a birth certificate for him. Secondarily, he's using someone else's Social Security number. It's been out for quite some time now that the Social Security number he has does not belong to him. It wasn't issued to him. And when no one really knows how he got it, nor will he explain, nor will, frankly, anyone in government explain why he's using a Social Security number that does not belong to him, that's been recycled from someone else who's now dead. Thirdly, he signed up as a foreign exchange student when he first received taxpayer funding to go to university here in the United States. Any questions left? Our second topic is going to be the TTP or TPP, the Trans-Pacific Partnership, and the TTIP. These are two treaties that are wending their way to us right now. They've been negotiated in secret for the last 4 or 5 years. No one in Congress has been allowed to see them. No one knows the real true extent of what they are. We've only seen 2 chapters out of 26, which have been essentially leaked by WikiLeaks and some other groups. The Congress people who have been able to request any portion of it have only been allowed to see limited access to the 2 chapters that we're talking about. And yet they're going to have to vote on it sometime maybe before the end of this year or immediately going into 2014, which is only, 4 or 5 days away now. The truth of the matter is, what we do know about both of these treaties, the TPP and the TTIP, is that both of these treaties accomplish one thing. They will ravage our nation of our resources. They will destroy even more the job market that we already have that's basically in collapse. And they will steal our sovereignty from the United States of America. They will offer foreign nations capabilities and advantages and benefits that we don't give our own nation, our own employers, our own manufacturers. And it will subject the United States of America to foreign courts and tribunals that will actually bear and carry a greater weight than our own courts. How insane is that? Our third topic, federal workers were given over the Christmas weekend an executive order pay raise. Now, the problem, of course, with that is that, well, heck, it's just another executive order, just another example of treason. Meanwhile, our military has their retirement benefits cut, which they were promised, and that was the reason, in large part, that many of them stayed on. They figured, hey, I'm doing my career here in the military instead of my career in the private sector, where I would be building a 401k, or I'd be getting a partnership, or whatever the case may be, or being able to build an independent retirement account, building Social Security. But they're not. They stayed in the military with the promise of a pension that would be paid to them as a result of their efforts and their sacrifice for the nation's benefit. But this monster, who resides in D.C., via executive order, gave a pay raise to federal workers. These are the same federal workers that oppress us every single day. What's worse is this will increase the size of their future pensions, because their pensions are based upon their pay when they leave. Holy smokes. So here we are, giving a pay raise to and a future increase in the pension size to federal workers whose greatest risk is the fact that someday Americans may rise up and put them all on trial for treason. Meanwhile, the military who's out there getting shot at every day has their pensions cut. I got to tell you, America, this Obama character is no Santa Claus to the United States of America. He is pure, unmitigated evil, and it's time our nation began to recognize him for what he is and how he acts. An executive order increasing pay raise is outside of his scope of authority. That is a congressional function only. They control the purse strings. And already, Washington is the wealthiest area in the nation. It has superseded New York. It's superseded L.A. It's superseded Chicago. Nothing comes close to the income salary areas related to Washington, D.C. An average home is on the market in Washington, D.C. for a mere 9 days. Many Americans have had their homes on the market for 900 days and still can't get them sold. Our fourth topic this morning is going to be debtors' prison. Folks, debtors' prison was something all of us learned about in fourth grade, which was an illegality. It was unconstitutional. I mean, the truth is, when we talk about debtors' prison, we know that that was overruled by our Constitution. You can't sit and say, okay, you owe money to the court, and so since you haven't paid, we're going to throw you in prison until you do. Because it defeats the whole point. How are you going to get the money if you're sitting in prison? Meanwhile, the courts are actually throwing people in jail because they owe money, court fines and penalties, to courts for everything from traffic tickets to minor drug charges and things like that. There are a group of articles out about it, including the ACLU, who's fighting against it. And there are articles all over the nation about what's going on. It's interesting, you're probably not hearing about it because the Ministry of Propaganda, the mainstream media, is hiding that truth from you. Why? Because it affects everyone. Get a ticket for a little nonsensical thing like a speeding ticket, running through a red light by mistake, failing to get your registration renewed on time. And you could subject yourself to going to debtor's prison if you don't have the money to pay the fines and to pay the court costs. And then on top of that, they're adding interest and penalties like the IRS to those little charges, making them balloon in size where people are literally sitting in prison until they can pay them off. And yet, it's essentially holding America hostage. It's holding your family hostage because they're scrambling, trying to come up with a way to get you out. So they're taking food out of the mouths of American citizens so that they can pay off fines and penalties to governments that are operating completely and exclusively at this point in a tyrannical sense. This is not federal court, folks. These are local community, city, council courts. These are local regional courts, district courts. I mean, this is insane. There are even articles in European and British papers where debtors' prisons were openly accepted. But here, no one's talking about it. No one but the alternative media. And the reason for that is because the Ministry of Propaganda doesn't dare talk about it. How can a court not know the law? And if they don't, should they be judging anyone for anything? They know it's unconstitutional. They claim ignorance. Well, as I recall, there's a famous phrase out there: ignorance is no excuse for violating the law. So how is it judges could not know? I mean, I remember this from 3rd or 4th grade history. The debtors' prisons were outlawed in the United States of America. I remember it very clearly. How is it that a judge sitting on a bench, ensconced daily in the concept of law, could not know that? Why is it that they are doing studies to assess why? I mean, I'm no lawyer. You're not either. But we both know it's unconstitutional, and it's against the law. They're handing out actual bench cards, they call them. This is a Cliff Note version of what the law is on issues like debtors' prison. To judges. They're giving them a cheat sheet to sit on the bench with them. You got to be kidding me. How can a judge who needs a cheat sheet, a Cliff Notes version of the law, sit on a bench and rule on anything? America, debtors' prisons are back as tyranny flourishes in our republic. All right, before we get into our first topic, I want to touch on a couple of guys that are really instrumental in keeping America's voice on the air. One is the Battery Station. They're located right here in West Plains at 303 Washington Avenue. You can find them on the web at batterystation.com. Their telephone number is 417-257-7799. I'd like you to make sure that you let them know that you heard about them on America's Voice Now, and I'd like you to patronize their establishment, whether you do so on the web if you're not local, or if you are local, make sure that you go in there and talk with them. They have excellent products. They carry a lot of ammunition, by the way. They also carry any kind of flashlight and battery. They have batteries for cell phones, for camcorders. They've got the 123 lithium batteries, and far cheaper than you'll find them anywhere else. You can buy a 10-pack of the batteries that they sell, where you'd get 2 or 3 in a package at any other retailer in the country. They know more about flashlights and electronic stuff like that than anyone else you'll know. They have an outstanding special on these dry boxes, which are these little waterproof boxes that you can store all kinds of things in, whether you're building a bug-out bag or you just want to make sure that when you're floating down the river, your camera doesn't get wet, or your cell phone. Make sure that you visit them. You can get to see them at the Battery Station, 303 Washington Avenue in West Plains. You can call them at 417-257-7799, and you can email them at info@batterystation.com, or just go to batterystation.com. Now, they don't have a full complement of all their products on the web. Most of the stuff they have on the web is their battery stuff. But I'm telling you, they have gear like you wouldn't believe. They've got tactical gear. They've got sleep systems, the military sleep systems with 4 or 5 different bags and components to them. They've got everything under the sun that you could imagine or want if you're interested in self-reliance, self-sufficiency, and you're a prepper. They even have freeze-dried food. And they support our cooperative program that really is geared and designed for you. We built a co-op program for our listeners. It's only open to listeners of America's Voice Now. You can get down there and ask for the co-op catalog, and you can order bulk food in like 50-pound bags, 25-pound bags, oatmeal and grains and rice and things like that, wheat, sugar, salt, the basics. None of it's frozen. This is all dried goods. and you can order that stuff at wholesale prices. So make sure that when you get down there, you say, hey, Mike from America's Voice sent me. I'd like to see the co-op catalog. They'll hand you a booklet, and you'll be able to go ahead and get the ball rolling. You will not be disappointed. I've had listeners who have told me that they saved up to 50% on their food bill by buying in bulk like this and then comparing it against what it would have cost them to do so at a retail establishment. The other group I'd like you to be aware of is the Wits End Classic Barbershop right on the square in West Plains. Now, Jason is a young fella. He's a friend of mine. He's a real patriotic American. He cuts my hair, by the way. And while I got a face made for radio rather than television, he does a great job. They also have right behind their barbershop, there is the Patriot Tobacconist Shop. Now, in there, they've got cigars and pipes and any kind of accessory or accoutrement you could look for. If you're looking for a late Christmas gift, they have humidors and flasks and all kinds of things related to either cigars or smoking or that kind of thing. They have lounge in there where you can go in and have a cigar and watch a program or sit down with a friend and just have a nice chat. It's a great place to go. I would encourage you to visit there. It's called the Patriot Cigar Tobacconist Shop. It's right behind the barbershop, so go in through the barbershop door and just go straight through the door into the back tobacco shop in the back. All right, we're going to take our first story here, and that is, again, Obamacare can't get approved, or Obama can't get approved for Obamacare. Now, it's interesting. The only group that is talking about this is Fox News out there, but even they're not really covering the issue because they're talking about the fact that Obama can't get approved. He went to sign up and enroll in Obamacare, and they said that, well, he can't do it because they have to do it in a different way because he's the president of the United States and blah, 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 blah. Well, Ed Henry from Fox News says somebody who's not waiting in line to enroll is the president of the United States. We learned today from the White House, initially they said he signed up for what they called a bronze plan, paying about $400 a month in premiums. But then they came back to us and said, well, wait, he didn't actually enroll. They said his staff did it, and that's because of his unique circumstance. As commander-in-chief, his personal information is not in various government databases. So healthcare.gov could not actually verify his identity. So he had to do it in person this weekend. So he was signing up in the D.C. exchange, but his staff had to do it for him. Now, that's interesting because the real truth is, those of us who have been following this president, we know that the real reason that he cannot sign up and that his identification is not in the system is not that, he pays taxes like everyone else. He's in the IRS database. He's in the Department of Homeland Security's database. And he should be in the Social Security database because before he became president and even before he became a senator, he still had some income that he had to pay into Social Security from, even when he was an attorney with Acorn. So how is it that his stuff isn't in the database? I don't buy it. Not to mention the fact that I've seen the birth certificate he doesn't have, but manufactured out of thin air, electronically. I saw the evidence that was promoted and pushed by the group that works under Joe Arpaio, their special investigations team. I was at a presentation where they showed us on a screen exactly how that birth certificate was manufactured. You see, when they put it up on the whitehouse.gov in a hurry to try to explain it away when all of this was going on, they made a serious mistake. When you work in Photoshop, you build layers. And so you take the initial document and you can layer an image on top of that, and then another image on top of that, and then another image on top of that. When you're all done, before you publish the image, you're supposed to do what's called flattening it, which means that it takes away all the layers and the image can no longer be edited. Whoever did his birth certificate was so sloppy about it, they actually never flattened the image. And they posted it up in a way that when it was downloaded, the layers were still available for removal. And anyone who's ever worked with Photoshop understands exactly how it works. You can simply take these layers and you can move them around the page. I saw the empirical evidence for myself, ladies and gentlemen, and I work with Photoshop every single day. And I'm telling you that the job that they did, listen, the quality of the job they did, and I'm no professional graphic artist, but the job that they did was done very, very poorly. And they mixed and matched a conglomeration of different pieces of other birth certificates, including the doctor's signatures and so. I mean, you could see him lift the doctor's signature and move it around the page. It was clearly evident how it was done. So he doesn't have a legitimate birth certificate. He's using a Social Security number that belongs to someone else. He has a birth certificate a Social Security number that belongs to someone in Connecticut who is dead. How did he obtain that? Where did he obtain it? I mean, he didn't live in Connecticut or in the Massachusetts area or in the Northeast area until he went to university there. But he was here in the United States. Why isn't it a Hawaiian Social Security number? Those questions remain. And they're not answered. And the truth is, this Congress should have opened this investigation up a long time ago. They refused to because they didn't want, and I don't know what kind of pressure was applied to force them to stand down, but they did not want to expose the truth, that this man is not an American citizen and therefore has no right to be sitting in the presidency's seat. The truth is, he's a Manchurian candidate in the truest sense of the word, in the sense that he is brought in from outside to take a position of power from which he can wreak havoc. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is undeniable. In fact, anyone looking at the legacy and the record of this president over the past 5 years can tell, without any real investigative capabilities, all you got to do is look at the results of his actions. Invariably, almost every one has been designed to do one thing. Somehow or other to destroy value, self-sufficiency, self-reliance, our industry, our resources, our capabilities domestically and internationally, our military. Every step taken. I mean, look, I could believe if it was once in a great while there was a mistake of immense proportion. But when every action that you take is a mistake of immense proportion, you can no longer believe sycophantically that this is just all a big sheer boondoggle. You're listening to America's Voice Now. We're going to take a quick break. When we return, we're going to tackle our second topic, which is the TPP, the Trans-Pacific Partnership, the TTIP, and these are both trade treaties. And then there's another aspect to this that you may not be aware of, and that is the U.S. and EU trade pact that is going to accelerate political and economic integration between the United States of America and the European Union. Ladies and gentlemen, I don't want to be part of the European Union. They're a complete and utter mess, and there's absolutely no reason why we should want or look forward to being a part of that. You're listening to America's Voice. You can find us on the web at americasvoicenow.org. You can also find us on our Facebook channel, and we'll be back in just a moment. All right. We return. See, those commercials really aren't very painful. You just got to ride through them for a second or two. You know the best part about radio? It doesn't cost a dime. Not a penny. Radio's best feature is its independence, its autonomy. It's autonomy from the Ministry of Propaganda, because radio stations are owned by independent patriots around the country. Oh yeah, I'm sure there's plenty of out there who aren't patriotic, and they're more than happy to toe the line and bend the knee. But there are about 10,000 radio stations in the United States of America, and thousands of those are news talk. Why is it that only news talk radio and the internet are the only places where you can find legitimate truth? Why is it that those two areas of the media system are the only two where you can find any level of truth? Well, we expose mainstream propaganda, and we tell the truth here on America's Voice Now. We encourage you to be a part of our program. You can do so by going to our website at americasvoicenow.org, and you can also do so by finding our Facebook channel at facebook.com/America's Voice Now. You can also find our YouTube channel where we post up the videos of every program that we do live. We do this radio show, but we also broadcast and stream it live over the internet. You can find us by going to our Facebook or our YouTube channel at youtube.com/America's Voice Now. And then we'd like you to share those videos with other folks. So if you find, or our Spreaker application, which is audio only, it's a streaming audio, and you can listen to that by going to our brand new friends over at Patriot FB. That's Patriot Foxtrot Bravo, like Facebook. It's basically a Facebook clone where you can go on there and join with other patriots. We broadcast the show live there every day from 8 to 10 a.m. You can utilize the player there. All you got to do is look up on the right-hand side of the screen, and there's a button here you can click to listen to the show live, or you can go in and replay it at your leisure at any time you like. There are other radio hosts on there, too. So not only will you have an opportunity to listen to AVN, but you can find other radio hosts that are similarly situated in terms of our patriotic leaning. I encourage you to do that because the truth is, folks, time's getting very, very short. We're seeing a massive move and push to take America and make it into, for all intents and purposes, just another third world country. The U.S. and the EU pact or trade pact that's being developed right now and is being negotiated is really detrimental to the United States of America. They've been hammering out the details on this purported trade pact called the Transatlantic Trade and Investment Partnership. Now, that's the one that's called the TTIP, the Transatlantic Trade and Investment Partnership. This essentially, for all intents and purposes, folks, is a merger of the United States of America and the European Union in two different fronts. One, economic arena. So we're going to merge our economic scenario with them, our economic outcome, with the European Union, which is in utter disarray. I mean, you've got Greece that's in meltdown. You've got Spain and France literally on the edge of bankruptcy. You have a complete utter disarray of the European euro, their monetary system, and now they want to entangle us in that foreign affairs system, which I might remind you, George Washington in his farewell address explicitly warned us against. He said over and over and over to us, not just in his farewell address, but repeatedly during his presidency and afterwards, that the best thing for America is to stay clear of foreign entanglements. And this is exactly what he was talking about. Now, it's interesting that both the TTIP, the Trans-Pacific Trade and Investment Partnership, Transatlantic, Trade and Investment Partnership, and the TPP, which is the Trans-Pacific Partnership. Remember now, we're talking about transatlantic and then Trans-Pacific. And both of these are theft of the United States of America's sovereignty. Both of these will place the United States on trade issues and political issues, including national sovereignty issues and including our Constitution and our Bill of Rights, under international tribunals. These are people that, for all intents and purposes, have no place in the United States American political scene, in the economic scene. We will be subverting our Constitution and putting it in the hands of tribunal members. These are unelected bureaucrats. These are people who actually hate the United States. And we're going to allow our nation to be subjected to rules and regulations imposed on us by them? We're going to allow our Constitution to be subverted? Really? You see, this is exclusively a domain of the Obama administration. These negotiations have been ongoing over the past 5 years from his date of inauguration. They didn't start in Bush's date, so you can't throw out there, oh, this is a Bush game. And listen, if you've been listening to me for any length of time, you know that I'm no friend of the Bush administration. The guy was a tyrant, and he was a domestic terrorist. And there's no difference between him and Barack Obama. The truth is, the only difference between them is in the name of the party they represent. But both parties have one goal in mind: your oppression and your subjugation, the stripping of your personal resources, the enslavement of you. Mark my words, folks. You think this is not coming into some sort of a fascist delivery system. I'm telling you that it is. In fact, there was an ex-Marxist who's actually literally coming out the other day and talking about how this is on WorldNet Daily, and I'll put these stories, when I talk about these stories and I read quotes and things like that, I put them in the subject line of the topics area of the YouTube video. So if you're watching this on video, you can actually go and read these stories for yourself, because I don't want you to take my word for things. I want you to do your own critical thinking studies. I want you to go out there and educate yourself and know what's going on, and then formulate your own opinion based on your determinations. It's not good if you just recite and parrot what I say. I want you to have your own understanding of these things. And so this article here in the WorldNet Daily is an ex-Marxist by the name of Horowitz, who's now no longer so, is actually calling Obama out as a communist. This is on WorldNet Daily, or WND.com. And he's actually calling for, his name is David Horowitz. He is indicating that the real goal here of Obamacare is to migrate this into a single-payer system, exactly like they have in where? Canada and the EU, and notably England or the UK. The truth is, meanwhile, while they're talking about a trans-Pacific partnership and a transatlantic partnership, they've also been working on, and this has been going on for decades, and did include George Bush, and it included Bill and Hillary Clinton, and it included Bush Sr., the North American Alliance. That is a merger between the United States of America, Canada to our north, and Mexico to our south. Folks, if you're not aware of what these monsters are plotting for you, you're really not in a position to, one, complain about what's happening, two, take any responsive action, and three, you're not in a position to help us and yourselves. Because if you're not educated about it, if you don't understand it, if you haven't taken the time to go out there and gather information and learn about what the importance of these issues is, then you failed in your duty. You failed in your duty to help defend and protect this. Let me tell you something. You may not have taken an oath if you've never served in the military or any other area of government service. But I have to tell you something. You did take the oath. You know why? Because you took the oath based on the fact that you're breathing, that you are living here in this republic, that you benefit from the rule of law, that you benefit from the constitutional privileges and freedoms that are guaranteed to you by that piece of paper, that were given to you by your Creator. You profit from that. You benefit from that. I mean, the poorest American has a refrigerator and a large screen TV and a DVR and a satellite service. The poorest. They have free food and free rent and free this and free that, free Obama phones. The poorest. I mean, realistically, you have accepted the benefits that come along with being a member of this republic, a citizen in this country. And therefore, you have an obligation, whether you choose to respect it and honor it or not. You have an obligation to defend and protect this republic against all enemies, foreign and domestic. And if you're not doing so, then you have abdicated your responsibility to yourself, your family, your community, and ultimately your nation. If you don't recognize that responsibility, you and I have nothing further to talk about. You should shut the channel right now and go find Kim Kardashian, or go on there and read about ducks and the duck guy and his I mean, the truth is, you can find many distractions out there, folks. But those distractions are what have placed us in the position we're in now. Your failure to recognize the imminent danger that our republic is in is what is causing the United States of America to fail. There's no other argument to be made. The apathy of the average American is what is destroying our nation. We're responsible for this. I expect an Obama or a Bush to act as a tyrant. That's what people in power do. Power corrupts. Absolute power corrupts absolutely. And even power, when it starts out in the smallest vein, desires and lures and grows. That's why even small positions of authority abuse that authority. And the higher up you get in the hierarchy, the more damaging you'll be to freedom and liberty to those around you. The presidency, once achieved, is achieved by decades, generally, of compromise and betrayal. That's the truth. Everything else that you hear is marketing. These men are not royalty. They're elitists. They're statists. They desire your capitulation, your kowtowing, your collapse, so that they may rule. H.L. Mencken once said that the desire to cure the world's ills is always rooted in a desire to rule. These people don't have solutions for you. The solutions they offer require your destruction, require your enslavement, your silence, your loss. When I worked on Wall Street, we used to have a phrase: in order for some to win, some have to lose. And I'm telling you, money is a finite thing, but so is power. Power is a finite thing. There's only so much of it to go around. And in order for them to have it, you must cede it. Now we're talking about, excuse me, we're talking about giving authority and power to enemies of our nation. True enemies. These are foreigners that didn't grow up with our Constitution, didn't grow up with our understanding of and our tutelage by our parents and our grandparents about what a great thing it was to live here in the United States, what it's like to be free, what it's like to have free speech. Do you know in England, right now, the Guardian newspaper is being assailed by their government? You know why? Because they blew the Snowden story out there. And they don't have a freedom of speech in their Constitution. They don't have that clause. They don't have it in Canada either. What does that tell you? Did you know that their GCHQ, which is the equivalent of our NSA, went into the Guardian newspaper and demanded and stood and watched as the editor for the paper literally took them down into the basement and showed them the hard drives that the data was stored on. Now, they didn't seize it, but what they made him do while they watched and video and filmed the entire episode was they made him destroy those hard drives with a hammer. Ladies and gentlemen, can you imagine DHS, the NSA, CIA, FBI storming in on the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, the Chicago Tribune, and demanding that they destroy evidence? That's what is in our future. This TPP and TTIP are allegedly trade agreements. But what they are is corporate manifestos. What they really are is corporate manifestos where corporations are given the power to make rules and governments are required to enforce those rules on the behalf of corporations. That, ladies and gentlemen, is the definition of fascism. Fascism is a merger of corporations and corporate entities and government. Corporations demand that government do things like, well, the MPAA, Motion Picture Association of America, and the RIAA, Recording Industry Association of America, have many times tried to pass limitations and censorship on the internet. Do you remember PIPA? See, these are rules where you will be able to be prosecuted for something as simple as putting up a link to a video somewhere that you don't have copyright authorization to. And the penalty will be financial, and which is, of course, a means of drawing resources away from the nation, and criminal, which is a means of turning everyone into a felon. And once a felon, once a criminal, then you're always subjected to abuse, to supervision. Don't you see it? The forest of tyranny is growing around us at a rate now equivalent to bamboo. We have left the days of oak forests, slow and sure growth. We are now in a window in which our nation is growing tyranny, fascism, at a rate equivalent to bamboo. Literally a foot a day. You can watch bamboo grow. Physically watch it. That's where we are. Any argument to the contrary is a lie and a cover. You don't have to take my word for it. Any intelligent, articulate adult who will look around them cannot deny it. Put an article up on our Facebook this morning about how another city got an MRAP. These are the military vehicles that are being dispersed throughout our nation to local police departments, small counties, small city departments. You think this stuff is making it into the way of our civilian police forces for the benefit of serving drug warrants? That's what they claim is. That's what they claim. Well, we're going to use it for warrant service. With all due respect, getting an MRAP to serve warrants is equivalent to buying a tractor trailer to do your family's grocery shopping once a week. I mean, it's massive overkill. Any citizen who believes this kind of regurgitated lie is a fool. This is all about control. It's all about intimidation. It's all about gearing up for a massive war against American citizens by their federal, their state, and even their local governments. And mark my words and make no mistake about it, this is going to be a war. And it's going to be a war of really, truly cataclysmic proportion. This is going to be the new civil war. Those of you who say, our local guys wouldn't do such a thing. These are people that know us. They live in our communities. They grew up with us. Oh, really? Well, let me see. Let's just check our history here. Let's see. There's Germany. There's Vietnam. There's Russia. There's China. There's Japan. There's Venezuela. There's Brazil. There's North Korea. There's Syria. There's Mali. There's Indonesia. There's the Philippines. There's the Sudan. Shall I go on? Or are you kind of getting the point here? The truth is, we are descending into tyranny. And we are descending into tyranny at an alarming rate. We are aligning ourselves on a global level with governments and elitists, statists, and fascists who would do harm to us. And once we allow them to have access into the innermost workings of our nation, our Constitution will be a quaint idea, forgotten, like dusty history. It's time for Americans to stand up. It's time for Americans to get off their chairs and do something about this. What should you be doing? Well, let's put some teeth to it. The TPP and the TTIP will ravage our nation of resources. You need to go out there and educate yourself about every facet of these two treaties. And I'm telling you the reason why. You need to start writing handwritten letters to your senators who will have to vote on these treaties. Same with the AAT, the Small Arms Treaty by the United Nations. They almost got it through. They only missed by 4 votes. 4 in the United States of America. And it's time for you to start writing handwritten letters to your senators to tell them that a vote for the TPP, for the TTIP, that a vote for the AAT is treason. An act, open, willful act of treason. You better get busy putting a pen to paper. Forget the petitions. They don't mean anything. They're useless as dust in the wind. Stop whining. Stop complaining. Take some action. This requires handwritten letters. You know why? Because I talk to legislators all the time. And I ask them, almost invariably, every single time, what is it that makes a difference? And you know what they say every single time? A handwritten letter outweighs phone calls. They don't even watch and listen to your emails. They delete them. A handwritten letter carries the most weight. Forget petitions. They don't even bother honoring them. They don't even read them. So educate yourself about these two treaties. Understand exactly what they mean. Know what they entail to the best of your ability. No more than your alleged representative. You've got to know more than them. And then get busy. And I do mean now. All right, you're listening to America's Voice. Make sure that you support our friends and our supporters, including the battery station at 303 Washington Avenue in West Plains, 65775. You can reach them at 417-257-7799 by phone. You can find them on the web at batterystation.com. Make sure that you support our friends over at the Wits End Classic Barbershop on the square in West Plains. If you would like to get in there, they also have the tobacco shop right behind there, the Patriot Tobacco Shop. They've got all kinds of things in there if you're a smoker to enjoy. They've got, hundreds and hundreds of different kinds of cigars and pipe tobacco and lighters and pipes and all that stuff. Avail yourself, I should say, of what these supporters of ours do, because they're the ones who keep this radio program on the air. Make sure that you're supporting them. We're going to take a quick break. When we return, we're going to tackle our third topic. Federal workers get an executive order pay raise. Meanwhile, the military gets cut. Wow.
It's about the restoration of our republic. We want to educate, encourage, enable the power. We stand for integrity, honesty, self-reliance, self-defense, and most importantly, no compromise on our foundational principles. This is America's Voice Now.
Find America's Voice Now on Facebook and at americasvoicenow.org. Here's Michael Evans.
Good morning, America. You're listening to America's Voice Now. We're in the third of our four segments this morning. Today is the 26th of December, the day after Christmas. You know, we're talking this morning about some of the abuses that are going on in our national government and our local and state governments. Those of you who say to me, well, this is only happening on a national level, are blind to the truth. This isn't happening on a national level. This is happening on a state level. It's happening on a county level. It's happening on a city level. It's happening on a local police department and sheriff department level. It's happening in every industry that you communicate and touch. Everywhere. We have become numb, acclimated to treason, acclimated to tyranny, acclimated, willing to accept the unthinkable. Make no mistake, folks, this is not something that is limited to the federal government. I'll grant you, they're leading the way. They're showing the example of what all these other smaller governmental entities should be doing. And they're winning. Just remember that in order for them to win, you must lose. There is not going to be a ribbon for second and third and 10th place here. Now, just in time for Christmas, Obama gave a pay raise of 1% to federal employees. His little tyrannical Christmas gift. Now, there's been a 4-year hiatus from salary increases for federal workers. They've had a freeze on federal worker pay. But I got to tell you something. They already make 30 to 40% more than the private sector. So I don't really feel bad about the fact that we're not increasing the wages of our oppressor and oppressors. The worst part about this is he did it via an executive order. Now, first and foremost, let's understand what an executive order is. It is a blatant abuse of executive power. It is an abuse of authority that has no limits. Our Congress has failed to stop the tyranny. They see it. They smell it. They even talk about it openly. I'm going to ask you something. 10 years ago, would you believe that we'd have been having this conversation now? Back in the late 90s. Let's go back 15 years ago. 1999. We were working and worrying about things like the coming of the new year. Everyone was gearing up for the Y2K fright. We weren't worried about government tyranny. We were worried about a computer bug. We thought we were working hand in hand with government. We thought that they were supporting us, supporting industry and businesses to make sure that our computer systems wouldn't go blank. Yes, there were problems. Yes, we felt the press and the pressure. But we weren't talking about a government that was operating in open tyranny. And today, there is nothing else that we should be talking about. Nothing. Nothing is more important than this. Nothing about your job, nothing about your retirement, nothing about your family, nothing about your religion even comes close. Do you know why? And I'm sure I'll get a ton of email about this, and I don't really care. The truth is, all of those things that you value, all of those things that you purport to put your strength and your trust and your faith and your hopes in, they're all going to cease anyway. In a tyrannical abuse that we see and the level that we see rising today, let me tell you something. All those things that you put credence in are going to evaporate. They're going to disappear like smoke in the wind. They're going to evaporate like water spilled on a hot sidewalk. Rapidly, completely. You think that pension you've been working on has any value. You think Social Security is going to be around to carry you in your old age. You think it's important that your children get a good education and that you should expend your hard-earned savings to help them achieve that. I got to tell you, folks, if you don't wise up soon, there's no future for your kid. There's no pension for you. There's no Social Security for you. There's slavery and hard labor until you die. People will say, well, wait a second. That's too harsh. This is America. I don't care. If you want to buffalo yourself with that kind of nonsensical thinking, you go right ahead. That's what they've thought in 100 civilizations, in 10,000 countries for the last 1,000 years. Can't happen here. Okay. Look at them now. Not a single one stands. Not a single one stands representing the benefit of the individuals who make up those societies. Not a one. Even ours. The last pillar of hope. The last pillar of strength. The one pillar that holds up the roof of liberty over the entire planet is fast reaching the point of collapse. Our economy is in a shambles. We've ceded our sovereignty as a nation. We allow this dictator to run rampant and destroy all that we have built, all that we have known, all we've hoped in, dreamt of. And still you sit and say, well, it's not that bad. It's going to get better. Folks, it's not going to get any better. It's not going to get any better until it gets far worse. And I'm telling you right now that if you allow this to get to the point where it reaches the climax of where their plan is for you, my goodness. The devastation of this will be complete. The losses that are incurred by Americans in terms of life, liberty, value, resources, all gone. You think that car has value. You think that home that you live in has value. How are you going to retain it? How are you going to keep it when inflation comes? How are you going to keep it when your mortgage payment goes from $750 or $1,500 a month to $4,500 to $10,000 a month? How are you going to do that? See, the time has come, people, for us to stop whining. We can't sit and ponder, well, who's going to do something? It's us. We've got a president operating in open rebellion, open abuse, open tyranny. And your Congress has completely failed. Your courts, the other bulwark against overbearing power, they're useless. They support it. They encourage it. They make it legal. Really? You believe that the final arbiters of justice in our nation are a group of people sitting behind a bench? Or worse yet, a group of ticks that live on the blood of the taxpayers of Americans? Really? That's shameful. The truth is, we've reached the culmination point. Who's going to stop the tyranny? Who's going to end the treasonous actions on the part of our state and our federal governments? Who's that going to be? Who's going to stop this president from passing executive orders? He's already passed enough of them, and if you don't believe me, go out and do your own homework and research. Identify what executive orders this president has passed. Look at them. 100% control of all manufacturing, all telecommunications, all land resources, all farming, all food resources, all stored resources and facilities, all telecommunications, all military, or all civilian law enforcement, all real estate, all property, in the event of what? A national emergency that he can declare. Folks, can you ask for a better setup for totalitarian rule than that? I think if you don't see it, it's because you willfully desire not to. Today, you should be setting up a New Year's resolution, thinking about it. And it shouldn't be, to drop 20 pounds or to fit into your skinny jeans. It shouldn't be to quit smoking or begin to run a little bit. It shouldn't be to do a better job at work. It shouldn't be to earn a little bit more income or maybe even find a job. I mean, those things are all worthwhile, but they pale in comparison to the losses which you're about to see. The losses that you're about to see far exceed anything that you can even imagine. The losses that are about to become de rigueur, standard operating procedure, the rule of the day. My goodness. Today, it's time for you to make a commitment. And I want you to think and spend a couple of days, because you've got that between now and the 1st. Putting some serious thought to, what is it that I can do that will make a difference in this battle? What is it that I can do? Because I'm an American patriot. I'm not some sideline sitter. I'm not some water boy in the game carrying water to the real warriors. I'm not the guy who sits on the sidelines and kind of hopes and lives vicariously through the other players. I'm an American patriot. And I'm willing to lay down my life to help solve this problem. The rest of you will sit and say, I'm choosing the side of slavery and betrayal over life and truth. Because either you are the solution or you are the problem. There's no solution here that's going to come to us from a third party. They're all against you. Government's not going to turn itself around. They're not going to begin acting rationally, legally, constitutionally, properly, ethically, morally. The day of the vacillation and the, oh my goodness, what are we going to do? I'm just wringing my hands here and I'm so afraid and I don't know what to do. In 2014, ladies and gentlemen, that must end. That must end because, again, either you are the solution or you are the problem. We're a nation. We're a people. We're businesses. We're parents. We're children. We're families. Today, we must begin to take action. How, you say? I mean, you're throwing out all these pejoratives. Do this, do that. How? What do I do? Well, I don't know you personally, not all of you, but I know that there are a number of things that you can do. One, you can become civilly disobedient and refuse to participate in your own enslavement. If you're unwilling to do that, we may not as well go any further down the road of this conversation. Do yourself a favor and shut this program off, stop listening, and go figure out what bra Kim Kardashian's showing us today. Go jump on Duck Dynasty and figure out how to make a duck call. Go turn on some sitcom and listen to the laugh track, the one that's supposed to prompt you to laugh. Yeah, that one. Because if that's as far as your imagination goes, we have nothing further to discuss. If that's as far as your dedication goes, we have nothing further to discuss. If that's as deep-rooted as your willingness to stand up and fight for your country goes, we have nothing to talk about. We do need individuals who will be creative, who will be courageous and fearless, who will be fierce, who will speak out even when their voice quakes with fright, even when they are so fearful, their mouth is dry, their throat is clenched, and their hands are shaking. You should be prepared for trouble, hunger, cold, fear, discomfort. But most importantly, you should be prepared for us to be successful. We can restore this nation to the rule of law. We can put this nation back on a path where we are in control, where we're not subjugating ourselves willingly into slavery. Where morals and ethics and honesty and courage are part of the daily order of things. where we bring order from this chaos that we're surrounded by. We've reached the end of a very, very long road. You know, I used to say, when we hit the end of this road here, we can only go left or right. And that draws a political, ideological aspect into it that really doesn't belong there. And I heard someone else reference it as an even better way. We're not going to go left or right. We're going to go up or we're going to go down. Because this isn't ideological. I don't care what side of the political fence you sit on, whether you're a Democrat, whether you're an independent, whether you're a Republican, whether you're a libertarian, whether you're a constitutionalist, a Green Party member, a communist, a Socialist Party member, makes no difference whatsoever. Because at the end of the day, those who assist this tyranny will have to live under it also. So it doesn't really matter what color of party you espouse. Those of you who believe that some kind of a change and some kind of a moral imperative to save the planet or save the poor, or save the immigrants, or save the whatever. Let me tell you something. The collapse of this society is going to affect you just as much as it affects those people who believe that that's really none of our business to solve all those things. Jesus told us we'd always have the poor with us. Why should we think it's government's place to spend taxpayer dollars to redistribute to everyone else? Ultimately, the end game of that is very simple. We're all poor. And there is a small oligarchy at the top that controls everything and everyone. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, I almost want to finish this. I wanted to talk about this debtors prison thing. And I wanted to get more into this executive order pay raise while the military is chopped. But I got to tell you, I would rather that Americans recognize that here's the perfect opportunity to exercise, not a call for violent arms, not a call for violence. That's not what this is. This is a call for civil disobedience in a peaceful but a massive way. And I think if we're not prepared to recognize that for what it is, and look at that in honesty, and look at it in truth, then you should put aside your dreams of an America that you knew and loved, and just capitulate to the tyranny. Put the handcuffs on right now, folks. We're going to take a break. We'll be right back. You're listening to America's Voice Now. Find us on the web by visiting americasvoicenow.org. We'll be right back. All right. This is our fourth and final segment for today. And I was going to break this section out called Debtors' Prisons. They're back, and as tyranny flourishes. But, the truth is that they're just emblematic. They're symptomatic of the disease that is pervading our society, our nature, our lives, our nation. I mean, debtors' prisons are an age-old concept. They owe, so you lock them up. But the truth is, folks, it's such a small piece of all of the puzzle pieces that are out there that make up the picture that should be apparent to everyone right now, right here. I got to tell you, if you are not creatively contemplating ways in which we can bring some order and bring this nation back from the brink of chaos, then I don't understand you. I mean, I have people say to me all the time, "What should I do?" Well, let's understand something first. I don't have a crystal ball. I don't have a political science degree. I don't have a master's degree in anything. I'm not saying I have all the answers. What I do know is that when I see it, I'm not unwilling to point it out. And I'm not unwilling to offer ideas and creative methods by which we can resist. But in the end, this is not going to be some level of organized resistance. You know, the only effective levels of resistance, when you are in our position, the we the people position, is going to be independent, distributed, self-directed resistance. And that self-directed part is your job. I mean, you've got to come up with the self-directed aspect of this. How does that matter to you? Well, I don't know, because I don't know, your financial situation or your work situation. I know that when we fund this through our tax dollars, we're actually feeding our worst enemy. We're feeding the beast. I know that every one of us can make a difference and an impact that way. You can stop spending money, which starves them of sales tax. And it starves them of, let me tell you something. Every dollar that moves through the economy, the government and the Fed scrape a piece off the top. Every transaction. That's why your money is worthless. Because that money, by the time it's gone around and around and around and around, has no value. You can stop buying things, especially unnecessary things, because that generates sales tax. So don't buy a new car this year. Live with the one you have, or buy a used one. One where no sales tax is required. That funds your state. Your state funds the federal government. Poop rolls downhill. If you're an employee, you can raise the total number of deductions that you place on your forms so that you are not giving an interest-free loan to your enemy. What good is that going to do, man? That's just a drop in a bucket. I know that. But when 150 million Americans are giving the government a $2,000 to $5,000 a year tax-free or interest-free loan, they're living on the float of your money. And they're using your resources to penalize and oppress and subjugate you. You can pretend that little bit doesn't matter, but it does. You can make sure that no matter what you do, Everything you do is done with the concept of civil disobedience in mind. Anything and everything that you do should be geared towards breaking the back of the beast that is about to swallow you whole. You can make sure that no matter what you do, you take every step you can to avoid having to make any payment to any government agency. State, local, federal, doesn't make any difference. Because by doing so, you're feeding that which will cost you your life. Who feeds their own destructor willingly? I mean, truthfully, if we could get a significant number of Americans to participate, and we were to say, we're not going to pay any employment contribution taxes. We're not going to do that. We're not going to send any money into the state governments and into the federal governments. We're going to withhold all the payments that we make to any government agencies. We're going to withhold all of our real estate taxes. We're going to withhold all the payments that we make to banks and mortgage companies and auto loans and credit card companies and revolving lines of credit. And we're not going to spend any money with anyone at all unless we see something immediate that we need for our survival. Food. We're going to cease all orders for new products and new services. We're not going to spend any money on any of it. We're going to put all the funds that we have, all those monies that we ordinarily would pay, into some sort of an escrow account, some sort of a holding account. I'm not saying you shouldn't pay your taxes and then squander that money and go on vacation. But you can put it into a holding account, an escrow account, not in a bank, because they have access to that, and they'll just take it. We can withhold these funds until the state and federal governments capitulate to our demands versus the other way around. What's the end goal of that concept? Well, you bring all commerce, you bring all funding, you bring all payments, you bring all due, all tariffs, all dues to a screeching halt. No money moves, period. And no money moves, no product moves. Now, I get it. This would take literally 20 million working families, not just individuals. 25 million American families to say, you know what? We're opting out. How realistic a goal is this? Well, at first glance, I agree with you. It's a tall order. And I also agree with you that most Americans don't have the courage of their convictions to do this. And then I would submit to you that that's exactly the problem. What we should be doing is saying, we're going to prepare ourselves and our families to take shifts while we camp out in front of our state and federal capitals until all of our demands are met. And we're going to stand there 20, 30, 50 million strong. And we're going to lock this place down. What we should be doing is making sure we have the resources to take care of ourselves for an interim period while we are simultaneously working with organizations that are not Republican and Democrat. The Libertarian parties, the Constitution parties, the Independent parties, the Tea parties, to say, We need the resources to be able to put some national scope ads out there in every major newspaper in the country, on every television program that will allow us to run them. And if they won't allow us to run them on there, then we should have them out on every website that is alternative media in the country. That we should be blasting this from every radio station we can get our hands on. Blasting what, you ask? Well, how about a simple line? Seeking qualified candidates. For a new lawful republic of the United States of America. Just imagine the uproar. You see, we have a massive amount of power if we only do it as a collective organization, as a collective group. And it doesn't have to be a recognized group. It has to have a little bit of coordination. And the people who respond to these ads, who say, yes, I'd like to be the senator from Missouri, I'd like to be the representative from Michigan, I'd like to be the governor of state XYZ, qualify them, interview them, dig into their history and their past, make sure that they're who they say they are, not just in word, but in deed, and vet them. And build an interim, secondary government, ready so that when this government collapses, whether by design, by their own ridiculous actions, or by our force of coercion to force them to leave and vacate, that you have an interim government to step in. That will only be there as an interim measure until elections can begin again, and done constitutionally. And every candidate has to agree. Otherwise, they don't get on the roster. They don't get on the ballot. Recalls everywhere. If you have a representative who does not represent you, it is inexcusable that your state representatives and your state senators and your federal senators and your federal representatives cannot be recalled. Not for transient and silly reasons. But when a clear pattern of abuse occurs, when a clear pattern of abuse emerges, you should be able to yank that representative back from Washington or your state capital, and not nicely, and terminate their representation of you. They're not acting on your behalf. Whose behalf are they acting upon? You know, there are a lot of solutions I hear out there. We're talking about Article 5 and the Convention of the States. No, not a constitutional convention. Just a convention to review a series and a group of pre-authorized and pre-designed constitutional amendments. The whole Constitution's not open for a rewrite. Anybody who thinks that, you better not talk to me about it and promote that in front of me, because I'm telling you right now, we're going to slug it out. This Constitution is not open for massive revision. And I understand that there's people out there who say, well, wait a minute, once we open that door, hey, I get it. But if the constitutional amendments are carefully screened and prepared and agreed upon in advance, I have faith that that process can work. But the question is, do we have the time for that process to work? I don't know. And I'm also suggesting to you that we should be doing multiple things simultaneously. This is not linear, folks. We don't have a timeline that says we can fiddle-faddle around with this one crazy attempt after another for the next X years. What I'm trying to impress upon you is we are out of time. That our nation is descending into tyranny rapidly. The accelerated pace at which we are falling is terrifying indeed. And you should make no mistake about it. The end goal is to take back our nation peacefully, civilly, but with unrelenting force. No government can exist without the approval of its citizenry, whether by coercion and threat or willingly. Up until now, we've willingly allowed tyrants to rule us. It didn't always happen that way. It wasn't always like this. We've given our Congress the ability to sanction the most tyrannical abuses of all of us. I mean, we've got debtors' prisons back. Give me a break. You gotta be kidding me. People living in the 1300s knew that this was the bad idea. How dare we reconstitute it? How dare we allow them to reconstitute it? We have agencies that, are so abusive of everything that America stands for. They sit there and literally crack the whip and beat you with a cat of nine tails on a day in and day out basis. We're talking about the EPA and the DHS and the IRS. And look, the list is endless. There's thousands of them. The ATF, the DEA, the SEC, the USDA, the FDA, the DOE, the FCC, the FAA. Folks, come on. Our Constitution says no law may be passed by anyone but Congress. And there are thousands of administrative agencies that are pouring torrents of hot and burning oil all over you every single moment of your life. The EPA is scheduled to institute over 600 new rules day one of 2014. Who are they to do such a thing? Those rules carry the same weight as a rule of law. And you will be prosecuted and fined and penalized and subjugated and whatever else underneath them. I don't know about you, but my Constitution says only Congress can make a law. And nowhere does it say we have delegated to Congress the ability to create some other entity, some sub-entity beneath them that can pass laws who are unaccountable to either Congress or us. So how do you fight this? Civilly, disobediently refuse to abide by all of it. I'll lose my house, I'll lose my farm, I'll lose my car. Let me tell you something. You're about to lose them all anyway. You really are. When debtors' prisons are reinstituted in the United States of America, folks, you gotta be kidding me. That's not a red flag thrown out by some kind of an umpire in the game. That's you ever see the guy in a football game and he throws the little hacky sack out with a rag tied around it? Yeah. This isn't that little rag that's the size of a hanky. This is a red flag, the size of a king-size bed sheet being thrown on the play. Debtors' prisons in the United States of America? A chief executive who passes executive orders flaunting, openly declaring his will is above the benefits of this nation and above the oversight of Congress and the courts. Recognizing and negotiating treaties that are against the best interests of America and hiding the contents of those from Congress, who then must approve of them, will be handed these documents and said, vote on it. No, don't read it, just vote. A president who can't even prove his own identity to the people he allegedly represents. Ladies and gentlemen, does that sound like the America that you know? I didn't think so. I can only tell you this. If I were designing my annual, my first of my January resolution, it would only have one word associated with it. You can define the terms of that word, but it would only be one word. Resistance. 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 You have no other duty, no other obligation. You have nothing else to look forward to. You've been listening to America's Voice Now. Please make sure that you help and support and encourage our sponsors to continue to support this program. Please make sure that you visit our friends over at the Battery Station at batterystation.com. You can call them at 417-257-7799. You can get a lot of the necessities that you would normally need for resistance there. They're located at 303 Washington Avenue in West Plains at 65775. Make sure that you call them and ask them what you can do to help them out with their annual Christmas troop drive. They send a ton of products and services over to our troops over in Afghanistan. These are the guys who are on the front line. Even though I don't necessarily agree with our stance in Afghanistan, these guys went over there to do the dirty work. Make sure that you also visit with our friends over at Wits End Classic Barbershop, right on the square in West Plains. $10 for a haircut, folks. You can't beat that. He even does straight razor shaves. Behind there, you've got, right behind the barbershop, in the same building, just go into the barbershop and go straight through the back door, you've got the tobacco shop, the Patriot Tobacco Shop. Go on in there if you'd like to meet some other folks that are interested in the same things you are. You can obtain pipes and tobacco and cigars and any kind of accessory or accoutrement there. All right, we're going to wrap for the day. Please find us at americasvoicenow.org on the web, facebook.com/America's Voice Now, and youtube.com/America's Voice Now. Jump on patriotfb.com. That's patriotfacebook.com. Make sure, patriotfb.com. Make sure that you are supporting that program as well. You can catch our show live there every day. Have a great day.